G'day, this is Neon. I was asked to do a tutorial on just a familiarization with Dark Radiant rather than a mapping tutorial. There's a couple of really good mapping tutorials out already by Springheel and Sothas. I suggest you go and watch Springheel's first and then go and watch Sothas, and then use Fidcals A-Z to learn how to really just work through the mapping process, because you'll have a finished map that way. But in the meantime, you probably just want to start learning how to mess about in Dark Radiant, and so what you need is the familiarity with it. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to quickly just run through. The first thing you need to do if you're going to set up a level is you need to go into the FMS folder, and you need to set up a folder name of whatever you like. My map, we'll call it my map. Doesn't really matter what you call it. In there, you've got to call a folder, have a folder called maps. This is where your map's going to stay. This is where all of it, for instance, if you go into here, this is my map. As you build your map, you build up all of these different folders for different things. So it's important that you get into the habit of doing this. Otherwise, later in the map, it becomes a real hard, really difficult to pull it all together into a published map. You also need another file in here. You need darkmod.txt. All file names and folders in darkmod are lowercase. This needs title : some name. Doesn't matter what it is. That's the name of your mission. Okay, and you got to save that. Okay, that's important. Then you've got to go into file. In Springheel's mission, he's using an earlier version of Dark Radiant, and in his version you have to click Edit Preferences Game to go and do this, but that's not the case anymore. In the later versions of Dark Radiant, you go into File, you go into Game Project Setup, and you go down until you find My Map, or whatever you've called your map, and you select that, and you click Save. Now, anything you do in here is going to get saved into those folders. So we're going to go through a quick tour of these icons. I'm not going to worry about these ones up here, except for this one, because these are pretty simple. Okay, they're all pretty straightforward. You just put your mouse over them and you'll see. The first one is we're going to draw a brush. Well, the very first thing you do when you're going to build a map is you need something to scale it. So we're going to put in a unarmed. Actually, we've already got one. Right here. You need an AI in the map while you're building it, because how do you know how big to make the wall if you don't have a ruler? Here is your ruler, your AI, and so you scale everything around him. Don't forget this step, or you'll end up with a map out of scale, and will just either massive rooms or be too small. You absolutely got to do this one step. Draw a brush. There's some hotkeys that you need to know. Okay, there's the first one is we're going to go through the tools. So we're going to pick something like this AI, and these are the things you're going to be using the most. These icons down here. This is mirror x-axis. That's this axis. Okay, and that will usually flip things. The one underneath that is rotate. That will rotate on the x-axis. The one below that is flip y-axis. The one below that is rotate y-axis. Then flip z and rotate z. This one here, this is important. This is snap to grid. When you have, let's just draw a brush with verts. The most important thing is that all of these little points, they're called vertices, and they have to be on the intersection points of the grid. And the way you do that, you press this, or you press Control G. They happen to be on the intersection point, so yeah, go away. So always make sure that all of your vertices, or verts, as we call them, are on the grid. You don't want anything sitting in between these grid lines. Even when you go right down to the lowest grid size, you want to make sure everything's always on the thing. That way you avoid leaks. and we'll come to legs. The next thing is to draw a brush. They're not called walls, sorry, but they're called brushes. You notice that the QE is selected here. QE means resize. Don't know why that's labeled that way, but that's the way it is. And it means you can resize your brush. Now, sometimes when you want to do something, and I'm going to show you a quick example of this. Prefab wall panel. Okay. So here's a wall panel unit that I made. So sometimes you might want to have you'll be putting a brush in here, and sometimes when you're moving it, it'll get out of alignment. Okay, it'll get off the grid position. So what you want, you go to translation, and it will only move in one plane. Very useful. Move left to right, up and down, or this way. It's only when you select QE can you then resize it. The other one is this one under here, which is rotate, and that allows you to arbitrarily rotate your brush in that direction. On the outer one, you click the inner one, you can rotate it in any direction. Hang on, I gotta go and have a drink. Okay, that's better. So we'll put that back. The next one is something you're going to use all the time. It's called the clipper tool, and that is this little triangle here. Well, the clipper tool, hotkey for clipper is X. And what clipper does is allows you to chop something off, or it allows you to split something. And this tool here allows you to remerge that back again. But usually you just use Control Z and use Control Z and just undo it. The way clipper works is you press X, and it always clips to the left. The first mark and the second, it will always clip to the left. Okay, if I go this way, the first mark and the second, it will clip to the left. Okay, left of this two. Okay. Another thing you want to do is you want to go into your preferences, and you want to go to clipper, and you want to have this ticked. Clipper tool uses cork. Okay, what the clipper does is it textures it with this. This is a cork texture, and what cork does, it tells the engine not to draw anything. The last thing you want is the outside of your map. This is your finished map, assuming. You don't want the engine having to draw stuff on the outside that's never going to be seen. So you wouldn't texture the outside. And the way you do that is you just texture the face, not the whole thing. That's the whole thing. That's the face. So the next thing is, I'm going to go through this really quickly. Is how do you enter textures? Okay, so another hotkey you need is N for November. This brings up the entity inspector. Now, the entity inspector allows you to inspect and alter entities. Entities are anything in the game that can act. Doors, lights, platforms, AI, anything like that. And it's got a range of attributes that you can enter in here. There's a lot more that you can select. So there's a lot more than you can select. AI has got if you've got the AI selected, shows us the attributes of the AI, whether it's civilian, sitting, starting sitting, starting sleeping, is visual and oral acuity. Not interested in that. We're going to here and this one is where you can get textures from. Okay, so when you first open this up, you'll get textures, then you go into dark mode, and this is where all your textures are. You know, wood, stone, things like that. So you don't select the whole brush to texture something. What you do is you select the face, because that allows you to, because you might want to have for instance, you got a brush here, a wall. So let's copy that. Spacebar copies. So you might want to have a wall here, and then have one texture on one side and another texture on the other side. That's why you use faces rather than That's why you texture faces rather than the whole thing. You're not going to have a different texture on the other side. You wouldn't do this because it wouldn't make any sense, obviously. I mean, you wouldn't put those two textures there because for obvious reasons. So the way you select the face is you go Control, Shift, and click. That will select the face. With the brush, the other things you need to know about the brushes is you need to be able to edit the vertices. So you press V for Victor, or you can press this one. No, this one. And it allows you to select the vertices. That allows you to move. Click on it. There you go. Allows you to change its shape. Okay. So you can change it into trapezoids, anything you like. Doesn't really matter. The other one you can do is, and I don't know the hotkey for this, is you can select edges, and you can change edges. So I really don't know why you would do that, because you could do the same thing with vertices. Quickly, what else? The next thing you want to know is you want to know how to add models to the game. So let's go into our room here, which I've made. I'll show you how. Actually, we'll do that first. Show you how to make a room. Okay, so we'll just draw a box like that. Now, there's a couple of things here. Actually, there's a few things you need to know. We're going to take another one. We're going to make it long, thin, and go straight through that one. Bring it down. And there's this one. You don't want to use this, but I'm going to explain it just for thoroughness, okay? This is called the subtract, this little circle here. And we'll get to this one in a minute. This is subtract. And you don't want to use this because it creates performance problems later on. So you just press that. And now delete it. And you'll see you've got a hole through that brush. Okay, right through it. You think, oh, gee, that'd be really nifty, but no, just don't do it. It causes a lot of problems later on. Trust me. It does. You don't want to do it. Same with this one, which is hollow. This is the way people used to do it a long time ago, back in the days of Quake. But you'll see the problem with this is you've got all of these intersecting corners here. You don't want that. That causes problems. Performance problems. You don't want that. There's a better way of doing it, and that is going the one underneath it, which is make a room. And you see now it's just all the corners meet perfectly. All the vertices just meet. Whereas before, oops, or is it this one? Before, they're all over the place. You see, there's vertices sitting on top of vertices. No problem. Back in the Quake days, what would happen with this is you would get sparklies down the wall. Even though you got a nice texture, when you got a nice texture, it would be just covered with all these little sparkles, which is really horrible. So that's what you do. You just go make a room. Okay, but it's up to you how you do it. The way I usually do it, I just make walls. You know, I make one wall, then I make another wall. Grid size is something you need to think about too, because the standard grid is 8. Okay, but that's basically the thickness of modern walls. Medieval walls tended to be a lot thicker. I think if you stick to 16 as a minimum, then you'll be fine. It's personal preference, so it just looks odd when you open a wall and you see an 8 grid wall on a medieval building. It just doesn't look right because they had really thick walls back then. So that's that. So now you want to know how to flesh out a room. So we've got this room. Select it, texture it. I'll get rid of all of this. Go through this quickly. Let's put some paint and paper on. Here we go. Put this on. There you go. There's a nice texture there. Now the other thing you need, another hotkey you need, is S for Surface Inspector. S controls how textures sit on your wall, and in this case you go fit, but you see it spreads. When you first put a texture on the wall, it's going to look terrible, absolutely fucking terrible. But look, I'll show you. Get rid of that. just draw a block out here. Where is it? And we'll just go plop some thing on there. And it's way too big. You see how it's way too big? It's always going to be like that. So you have to use the surface inspector to get it to look the way it should look. So you select the face, and this is the fastest way to texture a room. You don't go through and texture this one, then texture the next one. Now what you do is you select one, and you get that lined up the way you want it. You can fit it. That's no good. Let's try 1 by 3. See, these are circular patterns, so you want them to be roughly circular. So let's try 1 by 2. That's better. Now what do you do? Well, fastest way to do it is just go edit, copy shader. I don't know what the hotkey is for that. Just select the faces of each wall. Go to edit, go paste. Now the room's textured. Floor, you can go into wood, boards. Find a nice board. There we go. We'll use a wood parquetry floor down. Again, you see it's all over the place. It looks crap. So we've got to bring up the surface inspector, and let's try 3 by 4 because the room's longer than it is wide. 2 by 5. Oh, no, the other way around. 3 by 3. Nope. 4 by 3. There we go. That's better. Not a very nice texture. Get rid of that. The other thing you have to do is you have to detail your room. So that means adding cornices, which is here. So there's a little triangle there. So you just draw a block, cut it in half. Well, there you go. There's your cornice. A skirting board. We'll do the same over here. Drop the grid down. The numbers on top of the keyboard control the grid size. Oops, this way. Remember, it's always chopping to the left. There you go. Then you just texture that however you want. I'm not going to bother. We'll just copy this. Edit. Copy shader. And we'll just select the whole thing. I normally wouldn't do that because I want the back end corked. There you go. So that's your texturing done. Ceilings depends on the textures you've got. Normally people would use get rid of that. Get rid of that. Plaster. The usual ceiling is the stucco. This one. It's up to personal preference really. Some people use, depends on the room. Every room is different, and I never go for a blank texture. This is what I'm going to use for this and all for every room. No, it's like sometimes you might want to have a timber ceiling because you've got a floor above it, so you're seeing the floorboards from the floor above. So you're always going to be thinking the way the room is and the rooms above it. Next thing you might want to know is how to add a model to the room. So we'll go back here. So we've got the right click menu. Now here is where you add entities, models, lights, speakers, and prefabs. Entities is here. So normally you'll get it, it'll come like that. You go to AI, you can add an AI. Now let's go commerce, city watch, guard. There you go, there's an elite guard. Block, guards in the room. If you spawn in this room now, he'll be hostile. This guy is an unarmed guard. This guy here, he's unarmed, he will not be hostile. So we'll get rid of him because we don't want a hostile guard in there. Lights, same thing. Entities, we'll get rid of the AI. Okay, now because you want a light, there's two ways of doing lights. You can do a light, you can just have a floating light, which sometimes you will do. And then here's another hotkey you're going to need to know. So far we've got 3 hotkeys. X for clipper, N for entity inspector, S for surface inspector, and L for light inspector. And allows you to set the color of the light. Now add custom colors. And also, there we go. Also allows you to set the how the light is going to be portrayed in shadow wise. So we're going to go you'll be familiar with this if you played dark mod. you'll see shadows on the floor from moonlight coming through the window. That's how this is done. So this is a shader that's applied to the floor. So you'll have a light like this projecting from the window onto the floor, and with this effect. And I'll show you that. We'll actually leave that light in there. Actually, we'll do it better. Go to prefab, moonbeams. Here we go. So we'll just set this in and around. Oh, damn it. We're just going to put it right there. I'm just going to assume this is a window. Okay. This is a prefabricated thing. So this is the light that we're just talking about, this light here. Ungroup this so you can see. So this light, damn it, get in there. I can see that little light there. So, and you see it's using the metal diamond. You can't really see it there. Where is it? It's using this. Okay. And it's projecting that, going to be projecting that on this floor. We'll get rid of this light because this light's way too bright for this room. So we're just going to put in a model, a light entity, a light, static, oil lamps. There we go. We'll just put him in there. There's more lights. All lights that you're familiar with in the game will be in here. We'll just plop him over there. And this is another thing that you're going to need to know. This icon here. Okay. Sometimes you'll notice that, and when you're playing a level, you'll see things floating above a table. Sometimes if a mapper hasn't been attentive to every detail, sometimes you'll see that where something is floating above the table, which means he's tried to position it manually like this, and it just hasn't got it quite right. That's why you use this. It floors it. Bang. That is bang on the floor. Okay. So that's a good thing to remember and to use it. So as for furniture, you go right click, models. All of your models are in here. Dark mods, furniture, seating, bench. There we go. There's a nice little bench. Again, it's got to be floored. There it is. Put it up against the wall. Sitting over there. What about a speaker? We've got lots and lots of different sounds. I'm not gonna go into the attributes of speakers, because if you watch a Spring Hills tutorial, he'll tell you all about that. Ambience, lots and lots and lots of sounds. You know, like haunting. All things you can add into it. And prefabrications are, go away, prefabrications are, there's a whole list in here, all sorts of stuff. So why bother going and building a footlocker when you've got one right here? Everything is there, complete, absolutely complete. Whoops. It's absolutely here. Everything you want is in here. All you got to do is drop your loot in. This one's already got a key in there. And there you go. Doors, again, fake doors. Yeah, architecture, doors. There's lots and lots of fake doors you can use. Or you can go, if you want a working door, you can go into entities, entities. Oh, my throat. Movers, doors, and all the doors are in here. Okay, so you can take any brush and you can turn it into a door. So I think that's pretty much everything you need to know just to get started. So one thing you're going to need to know is how you do curved surfaces. If you draw out a brush, okay, over here. Where are we? Here. Where are we? So this depends on which one of these orthographic views that you are looking at. Okay, if I'm looking at this one, then and I do a patch, then the patch will be in this plane. Okay, so simple patch. If I'm looking at it on this one, then it will be in this plane. You see? Another thing about texturing is we need to look at this too. What about this? Give me something. So wood, boards, panels. Give me a panel. There you go. Okay, so we'll set that. Fit that. So fit that. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Okay. Now texture lock. If you do not have texture lock on, this here, this is what happens when you move this. Okay. The texture doesn't move with it. If you've got texture lock on, it stays fixed. So always make sure you've got texture lock on before you start mapping. Otherwise you just got to spend ages getting a texture perfectly aligned, and then you go and move your brush and it's all gone. So always make sure you've got that on. Oh yes, this is the other one you need to know about. So you've been building your map, and you got, I've got a nice little mansion here, and you think you're building a child's bedroom, and you think, oh Jesus, I really wouldn't mind a doll's house in here. Actually, let's do it over here. Put it over here next to this guy. Okay. So what you can do is you can come over here and you can click this. This is model scaler, and just you go way down. You can go way down. Now you've got a perfectly scaled down little dining chair right next to this big giant garden. So if you wanted to put a doll's house in the game, you could do it. For some reason, now the reason the way I used this was recently I made a cabinet, and I wanted a really nice I wanted a nice handle on the drawer, but I didn't like any of the ones that we had. So I took one of the door knockers and scaled it down and put it on the handle, and it looks really, really nice. There's lots of ways you can do things, so if you just got to think about it, of what you want to do. Now, before we finish off here, we're going to show you what this room looks like once it's done. So the other thing you need to do is you need to put the player start in. The player start, you go right click, and let's get rid of it. So you go right click and create a player start. Now the arrow always points to the direction that the player will be facing when he comes into the room. So rotate him around. Always want to make sure that unless the player is going to spawn into your map by jumping over a wall like he did in Briarwood Manor, then you want to floor him. If he's inside the floor, like this, then when he spawns, he'll be stuck in the floor and he won't be able to move. So it's important to floor it. Anything else? Anything else? I think that's patches. That's what we were talking about. So we draw out our brush for our patch. I'm going to use this one up here. And we go, this is how we do curves. And so you decide how big you make this, okay? For most patches like arches and things like that, you're going to be using 3x3. Sometimes you want to do something a little bit more like a vaulted ceiling or something rather. You might want to use something a little bit more complicated. That's fine, just do that. There is another thing I was going to talk to you about, I wanted to do because it's important. We'll do this here. So we've got our patch, okay? And you press V for vertex, and the pink ones are the corners, are the anchor points. Think of them as like anchor points. This is where it's going to join other brushwork. The green points are where it bends. Shift and drag will select all three of them. Okay, and then you can just do a nice little arch like that. But that's not the way you do arches. if you're going to do an arch, the way you do an arch, or the other thing I'll do before I do that, is sometimes you might just want to lift the middle one. So you move him out of the way, because you can't get the middle one. So you move him out of the way, and then you lift him up. And you get a nice, this is like if you want to do a hill, or you want to do terrain, like if you want to do a city street, you know, you might want to have it so it drains water properly, so it looks slightly saggy in the middle. Now if you're going to do an arch, the way you would normally do an arch is, so move them up. Normally you would move them there, take them there, and there, and you got a nice arch. Now the problem with texturing this, if I texture this, and I'm going to show you something, and I go fit, well actually that one worked pretty well. Often you'll get distortions, and the way that you fix it is you'll take a draw thing above, and you'll get the texture line nicely there, and then you'll copy that before you curve it, paste it on, and then curve it, and then the texture will be aligned. Otherwise it might get distorted. That often happens when you're making patches. So then you'll have to make another patch to fill in this gap through here, and there's things online about how to do that, so I'm not going to go into that. And that's it. I think that's everything. You can experiment with some of these other buttons and that you want. If you build, one of the things that you want to do is, when you're first starting out, is just messing about. So you might just want to just like grab a prefab, like let's go to where is it? Furniture. Like one day I wanted to do some mapping, but I didn't want to actually work on my map. So I built a shop bar. Where is it? Here it is. So that's something that I can use in the future. It's just, you know, I just felt like messing around in there. And this is a good way to sort of build up a library of stuff. And then once you want to use this, what you can do, rather than having this as brushwork, which is great if you want to go back and edit it. So you save it, you go to File, and you save select it as a prefab. And I'm going to go back to E, Games, Dark Mod, Prefabs. Make a folder in here under your own name and save all your prefabs in there. And you want to organize it so that the same way everything else is organized in the game, architecture, furniture, blah blah blah, get it all sorted, otherwise it becomes a real hard pain in the ass. But once you want to use it in your level, you might want to go up to here and export this as an ACE model, and that will, then you can use it as a model, and that will only make it the performance better. And then you can also scale it. So we are so now what we're going to do is we're going to compile the map and show you what it looks like when inside. But before we do that, there's one other thing you're going to need to know, and that is how to fix leaks. So we're going to take this map and we're going to give it a leak. We're actually going to give it 2 leaks. The first leak was it's going to make a hole in the wall, and the second leak, we're going to drop this below the floor. Okay. So I'm going to save that. Okay, so now you can see this. So we've got dark mode loaded. So what we do is we go into you press Control Alt and tilde, which is the little swiggly thing left to the one on the top of the keyboard, and you type dmap and the name of the map, which is test, and it leaked, which we expected. So you go back into the thing. Finding leaks is one of the banes that you're going to have to deal with, because a leak is it's an entity that is leaking into the void, and the one thing you can't have is you can't have any entity leaking into the void. So sometimes when you've got a fairly complicated map, trying to find leaks is a bit difficult, but fortunately we've got a way of finding them. And so you go into File and you click on Point File, and it will actually point exactly where the leak is. Sometimes it's clear in really easy like this, which is really easy to fix by just closing the hole, and that will fix that leak. Other times you'll get a leak like, and we'll just do it again. It leaked again, of course. Other times you'll get a leak. Oops, and we go point far, where you know the whole map is perfectly sealed, but you're still getting a leak. And because sometimes here it's fairly easy, because what matters is, let's go down here. This little blue line, green line, and red line is called the origin. Okay, and what matters when it comes to leaks is whether or not the origin is inside the map or not. Even though and there are some items in the entity list that have the origin separated from the actual thing. So sometimes you will get a leak where the object, nothing seems to be out of place, but if you really look closely, you'll find that there's an origin just outside the map. And if for some reason you can't find the leak, and you go there, there's no holes, there's no origins, there's nothing, then what you just do is you just draw a box around it. Just. So sometimes I've got one leak in my map that I had that had this problem, and that was how I fixed it. Oh, it still leaked. It still leaked. Doesn't matter. What we'll do, and you can fix it. You gotta follow it. Now it's got it. This should work. It should work. Don't make a liar of me. There you go. That worked now. But what you just really would do, if once you found that this was the problem, you just lift it out, explore it again. That's it. So now we're going to check what it looks like in game. The map it test, and type map test, and we'll go and take a look. Now remember I said about that window light with the moonbeams. This is that effect I was telling you about.
Uh-oh,
So,
this looks bad.
uh-oh, it looks bad. Yep. So there's just a and there's actually two lights on here. One is projecting the blue light from the moon,
Help me.
and the other one is projecting the shadow. So this is your finished room. This is your first room done. So I'll shut up. So you can cut a line in this wall and put in a door, and then a corridor, a kitchen,
Help me.
lounge room, maybe a dining room, maybe a street.
Help me.
On the other side of that
It's going
wall
after me.
could be your future map, which could be just a really amazing map. You won't know unless you really sort of go,
Help
"Oh,
me.
I'm going to do this." And let's now, one other thing you need to know is how do you get your map to show up in the map list inside the game. And the way you do that is you go to Start Mod folder, this one. So what you do is you've got to at the moment, this is my work in progress, so I've got in my map folder, I've got lots and lots of different versions of the maps that I'm working on at the moment. Okay, it's still the same map, but it's just different versions. But when you want to come to publish, and this is a bit early for this, but it's you might want to see your map show up in the thingamajig in the menu. What you got to do, you got to make sure there's only one map file in here, including all of these files from compiling it. And then you just select the whole thing, except for that. Or you've got to have this one too, this text file, which has got the name of your map. In this case, it's Briarwood. And you just select the whole lot, except for that. And archive it. Add to archive. Select the zip. Change the extension to PK4. And click OK. And that will be it. And now that mission will now show up in the mission list in the game. So there you go. That's everything. Now the other thing to remember is prefabs. don't forget prefabs. Go through on I think it's episode 3 of Spring Heel's tutorial series. In the description, you'll find a link to his prefabs. You want to get that. That is a really good set. The models that he talks about in that game are actually now in the game. Actually here. You can just go Dark Mod, Architecture, and all of his modules are all in here. They're all there. That's all of his modules that he's using in his series. So, and the beautiful thing about his modules, and I'm not going to go into this, is they make mapping really easy. So, there you go. Snuck up a building. Well, and it's just add one onto the top of the other one, and you just build up. You can build up a whole street in minutes this way. Right? It's a really good idea. The module is really good. However, the problem with modules that I don't like about modules is that everybody's maps tends to look the same. So you've got to make a comparison between whether you want to build quickly using modules, or do you want to develop your own style by custom building everything. I like to custom build everything. So and mix modules. Sometimes I will mix modules in. So anyway, that's it. You're done. We are finished. Everything you need to know about Dark Radiant and how to get started making your maps. And I hope you enjoy your time, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Here comes the music.
Boom, 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 boom. I'll shoot you right down. Boom, 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 boom. Ow, 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 ow. Boom, 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 boom. I'll shoot you right down.